You're listening to the Coop Homeschool Podcast.
This is your podcast for community, humility, and joyful fun in homeschooling.
I'm Mandy.
I'm Jessica. And this is
The Coop. Today we're talking about charter schools.
Ooh.
We're going to provide an overview of what charter schools are, the many types of charter schools, and then the pros and cons for homeschoolers enrolling in charter schools.
The pros and cons.
The pros and cons. Yes, it's very fancy.
Yes.
But before we dive in, let's get some scoop on the Coop. Mandy?
Okay, so it was Chinese New Year.
Yes.
And although my kids were sick for our co-op event, which sounded amazing, we did still celebrate Chinese New Year on the actual first day of Chinese New Year,
February 1st.
Mm-hmm. But it was so cool because our co-op was doing it, even though we didn't go. We read the book she said to read, which was Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. We did a read aloud audiobook of that, and they were at the swings listening to it. But they were entranced by it. Yeah. They would go in 2-hour sessions.
Right, it was great. So what the book did,
you should.
But it was a story. It was a fictional story of this little girl who's going on this adventure, and she basically encounters all these different Chinese folk tales.
Yeah,
and so it was a neat telling of folk tales.
And I think the kids could be actually more interested in it because it was like a change, like a new story every so often.
Right. And
it was so funny. I was listening to my son be like, I hear a story coming.
That's so cute. He could hear the foreshadowing.
Yeah. So, and then we read this book called Nian the Dragon, and learned about the legend of this warrior or monk that fought the beast or the dragon and the new year. And we watched The Girl in the Moon, I think it's called, and Wish Dragon. Wish Dragon is hilarious. Like, that's awesome. Marcus even laughed out loud because it looked like two dragons were French kissing.
Oh my goodness.
Because the people in the dragons, their feet were doing like kung fu fighting. And
that's
so
hilarious.
The kids didn't notice it, of course, but Marcus is like, oh my goodness.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then did you know that the Olympics just started?
Yes.
And so we're, I don't know, a couple weeks away from this now, but as we're doing this. And it's in China. So it's just like a full circle.
Yeah, it was a good time to do our co-op to inspire learning about China more than we would have.
Yeah, and one of the person who led that co-op, she's Chinese and knew everything about it. And I watched from afar on Instagram stories with FOMO all the wonderful things that you guys got to do.
Yeah,
someone has the sniffles. You can't go anywhere these days. So
yeah. It was a good day.
But yeah, no, I loved getting to do that. So it was really cool.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, my scoop is that my new 4-year-old, every once in a while I get this little pang of guilt about not doing anything formal with him. And I didn't really with Sophia either, but there was definitely more one-on-one time and intention. But now that he likes to sit with our learning, which I shared a few scoops ago, he is getting really interested in like his reading and his letters and doing things like that. Like he asks for things to do now, and he likes his letter books, and every once in a while he'll just sing his ABCs, and then in our music class he has to sing the letter sounds A, B, D, F. And so it's just really cute.
It almost sounds like obscene.
I know it does. But it's really hilarious. Once you've got it down, it's good. But when you first hear it the first time, you're like, what is happening? Like your brain gets all mixed up. But he can do it now. And so it's just really neat. And, he likes learning all the sign language letters.
Don't you love it when they combine? So they're combining reading phonics basically with sign language and music. Don't you love it when things can just be naturally combined?
Totally.
Compound.
And it's fun. And there's no pressure. Like, it's not a forced thing. He loves going to his music class. It's only 30 minutes. And then we have the joy of listening to the CD in the car. And my daughter went through that program, so it's funny for her to listen to it. She's like, oh my gosh, I remember that.
Yeah, and this is through Let's Play Music,
yes, right? Yeah, it's their Mommy and Me program, their sound beginnings. But he really has such a good foundation, and so then he knows all of his letters, and so at the end of the day I sit there and go, oh, preschool done. He's got so much more to learn, but he's definitely getting that foundation because he's actually immersed in what we're doing. And so I just wanted to share that it's just neat to watch him and to see what he knows, and he recognizes things on pages, and he knows his newest one is rhyming.
Cute.
Yesterday,
that's fun.
Out of nowhere, he was like, Mom, birth and earth rhyme. And I was like, why did you even think of those two words? Like, it was out of context.
So he might be a language person too.
He might be. And so it's just really neat because he has a pretty clear grasp of what a rhyme is.
Yeah.
And then to come up with those words that I don't think anybody had said conversationally or otherwise in a while.
Yeah.
Birth.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it was his sister's birthday, so I guess
well,
that's fine. But birth and earth,
it's really good. Good job, Augie.
Yeah. So that's my scoop. All right, you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay, so I wanted to start by discussing what a charter school is and explaining the different types, because I think this is where a lot of people mean one thing when they say charter school, while there's really a bigger...
Well, people don't even know what they are. Like they know they exist. They know they're called a charter school, but they don't even know how they're connected or not connected.
Right. So I wanted to dive into that, discuss the types, and then we're going to focus on one specific type of charter school and provide our pros and cons.
Awesome.
Yes. So a charter school is a school that has been thought up by an administrator or a principal or a supervisor who creates a board. It needs to be run by a board, and then it gets authorization through a school district, and then it gets approved to become a publicly funded school.
So it's a public school.
Exactly. So it's a public school, and it receives public funding. Charter schools are not, in their definition, private schools, but they do not have to operate using the same laws, rules, and regulations that the government-run public school system does.
Yeah, why isn't every school then just a charter school? You know, like then they would all have autonomy.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it is.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's a lot of people who work against the charter schools because they have shown some success, which I'll talk about more in a minute. And so they don't want them as competition. Why is education competition, first of all?
Yeah.
Issue number one.
If more people want to go to a charter school, then the teachers can go there.
Right. And maybe they're doing something that's better.
Yeah. And then you can learn from it and adopt it into the chain of schools.
Right. So as of now, charter schools operate completely separately than the public schools. And 45 states in the country have charter laws. So it allows for certain types of charter schools. Now, each state allows for different types. And I couldn't find information on the literal types of charters because I think it's anything that will be approved by the authorizer.
Yeah, it's probably unique to each charter of what they're offering.
Right.
And then you have to stick to it once it gets approved.
Right. So the charter is basically its list of rules and regulations that they're going to follow in order to receive their authorization and therefore their public funding.
And then probably the school district then determines can that fit. Can we authorize something like that? Can we oversee something like that?
Right.
Is that going to compete with us?
Is it a problem?
Yeah. And then that's why certain charters can do certain things and certain charters cannot do certain things.
And so each state is going to allow for different types of charters, or they might not allow for them. So it's going to vary state by state. Of course, we know more about California because that's where we are. So in a minute, we're going to transition more into specifically a type that exists here. But I just wanted to throw that out there. So charter schools exist around the country. And in fact, there are over 3.3 million students enrolled in charter schools.
That's amazing.
That's a pretty good percentage.
Yeah.
And in total, there's just a little over 7,500 charter schools throughout the country.
Cool.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we're going to go into the types of charter schools. As I said, it all depends on the authorization that they get based on both state law and the authorizing school district. So many charter schools are typical brick and mortar schools. You know, they have their 8 to 3 on campus hours. Students have to enroll and show up every day. And type of thing.
And they might just have like maybe a focus, because I remember doing my counseling internship in Vista, and they had a music or performing art. Yeah. But everyone was there who wanted to be into visual and performing arts.
Yeah. It was a neat school. Yes. So some charter schools have a specific focus or, an arts focus. Some are just trying to provide an alternative, and they do things differently. Their classroom style is different. So the teachers may approach learning differently than focusing on testing, for instance. And so they are more focused on well-rounded education. The format of class is probably different. Or they allow for more opportunity for arts and movement to incorporate learning.
They have at the elementary school I was at, they had the kids actually had electives in their elementary school day.
And then some of the schools in New York, for instance, are highly academic, and they're very successful in what they do. They're in the inner city, so they're taking this population that is not doing well in the traditional government public schools. They come to the charter school, and they are suddenly having success. But I think that's because the format of class is different. There's a lot of studies saying incorporating music and arts, not incorporating, but actually integrating them. So when you learn both subjects at the same time, it is better all around, and you get higher results. So many charter schools are doing that, or just finding alternatives that work, or finding ways to reach the children they actually have. Instead of trying to make the children into what they want.
Right.
Yeah. So
they're a great experiment too, aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah, they are. They're a really great experiment, and we'll get there in a second too.
Mm-hmm.
But I was saying they range from these types of schools that mirror more closely the typical public school, and then they go all the way on the other extreme to fully independent study, what we term homeschool charter schools.
Yeah.
So they allow for an independent study program. They're still publicly funded. So as homeschool charter students who are enrolled through a public school, there's still things you have to do and that kind of thing, but it's all independently done at home. So you do get some level of autonomy, which we'll go into. But there's another type that's kind of right in the middle, which is a very popular type here in California, which are the hybrid charter schools. So they have a brick and mortar, and they offer a few days on campus, and then your other days are at home. You could also be fully at home in your curriculum and then attend extracurriculars or electives on campus. So they're kind of a neat little hybrid if you're looking for that, but still want your kids at home more often.
Yeah, like if you want more guidance, but want that freedom.
Yeah.
That's the hybrid's a perfect match for you.
So that's kind of the full range on each spectrum of what a charter school is, but not every state allows for the independent study homeschool charters. So if you're somewhere else and you've never heard of one, it's probably why. But here in California,
which is shocking that California actually has such a wide spectrum and allows so much right now, at least.
And
with
doing
charter
all
schools.
of this research actually made me think, can the state really tell us all, tell the homeschool charters and regulate so closely?
I don't know.
Who do they put the pressure on? If
they put it on the authorizer.
So then the authorizer, as a public school,
they don't want to lose their
funding.
Yeah, because they have other schools under them.
So they're basically using the middleman to bully the homeschool charters into following basically the public school model.
Because we have accountability, accountability people come to our school from our authorizer.
Right. To check everything.
Yeah, and then they have ones above them check us out in all their schools and then tell them what they need to do differently with us. So there's 2 levels of accountability.
So obviously we are both, we have our students enrolled in a homeschool charter down here in Southern California. Mandy was once on the board. Is that okay to say?
Yeah. For 2 years.
Exactly. So she does know a lot more about that, because a lot of what she helped do was make sure that the school was
compliant.
Yeah, compliant. Was on top of their needs and requirements here. But I did want to say that there is an amazing book by Thomas Sowell. He's an economist, and he's a proponent of charter schools. So he wrote Charter Schools and Their Enemies, which we will link. I'm holding up if you're watching the YouTube. And he shares the success rates of charter schools, and he breaks it down into minute measurements, grade by grade, subject by subject, and shows for charter schools that are set up almost identical to the public school
in the same building.
In the same building.
Yeah,
exactly. So you're taking away a lot of
confounding variables.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's basically a level playing field here. The only difference is literally the instruction or the setup of the school, that type of thing. And almost measure for measure, the charter schools are outperforming. The charter school students themselves are outperforming their public school counterparts. And it's fascinating. So there's a lot of dense statistical information at the beginning of the book.
Yeah, the first 2 chapters, I feel like.
It's all tables and charts. Yeah, I can show you a little page here.
And when you listen to it on an audiobook, audiobook, it's like
line by
6th
line.
grade. Level 1 results. And you're like, oh my goodness, he's going to read the whole chart.
Right. But he talks about 2 major charter school organizations, the KIPP schools and then the success schools. And so he's talking about those ones. And so not every charter school is outperforming every public school.
Right.
It's not across the board.
He was looking in New York.
He was specifically looking in New York. And then later through the book, he talks about how some of these programs came out to Los Angeles and how they do really well. And so it's really neat to hear charter school success and know that even for kids who don't have a lot of choice in their education, where these charter schools might actually be their way of having school choice.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I know we're not doing a book review right now, but what I found fascinating was the differences between charter schools and regular, in that teachers do not get tenure in charter schools, but they have tenure in the public school or in the traditional public school.
Yeah.
So the unintended consequences of that are sometimes huge.
It was ugly.
Yeah.
So Thomas Sowell definitely goes into some detail about some of the ugly side of the way that the public schools are set up, even in how they hire and keep or don't keep their teachers.
And he's not a political figure. He's he's become one, but he's a professor at
he's become politicized, but he himself is an economist. And so he's looking at this informationally, statistically, and he's looking for this stuff. But as a Black man, he's also looking for the different ways that there can be a positive improvement in society for all lower income kids.
Like you were saying, school choice. Like that was the way that lower income kids could have school choice.
Right.
And what's sad is the people who seem to care or like to, I don't mean to get political, but like to tout that they care about lower income people, are trying to do away with the very thing that gives lower income people choice.
Right. Exactly.
It's really maddening.
People who have the money, the time, and the ability to drive their kids to their school of choice probably are driving them to better schools
and
with
probably
higher
private schools that cost money.
Private schools.
Yeah.
But when you take away the ability for everybody else to have school choice, that's really not okay.
Yeah, it's an elitist society.
It becomes competitive education for children, which is really not benefiting anybody except for the people who can afford it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
That's different.
We've been wanting to do a book club thing on this for a while.
We do, but there's so much to unpack, and it's not totally relevant to homeschooling other than school choice, which is what we're big proponents of. So now I want to get back into our pros and cons. And our pros and cons are specifically on the independent study homeschool charter. So that's what we're enrolled in.
Because the question is, should I sign up for a charter, or should I just private school affidavit it where I it's just me? I'm not part of any school.
Yeah, basically you tell the government, I'm not enrolling my children in a school. They will be educated at home under my supervision, essentially. Every state has different provisions for that, but all 50 states allow for homeschooling privately. So there are pros and cons to choosing a charter school, and a lot of these are just going to be personal. Yeah. So while we share these, we're not saying that everyone's going to feel this way. These are literally our pros and cons based on our personal experiences with the charter school. So someone might see one of my pros as a con.
Oh,
and
totally.
vice versa.
Yeah, depending on what you need.
And even I'm curious to see, Mandy and I have not compared lists yet.
Yeah.
So I'm actually interested to see if we have any differences here.
We're so fun.
Yes. So I'll list I went with 3, and I can see you have more than 3.
You know, I always
But you like to dig deep too. Yeah. And whereas I'm like, let's keep it.
Yeah. You're a zoomer outer.
I'm a zoomer outer. So there might be minutia that goes into each of mine here. Yeah. So I put for the number 1 pro of charter schools was educational funds. And this is after my 5 years of being enrolled in one. At this point, for me, that's pretty much the only pro I have left is that they help provide funding for curriculum, for other things that I don't have to pay for out of pocket. And
that makes it, as of right now, worth the extra things we have to do.
It's worth some of the cons at the moment. Right. You know, to balance out being able to do that.
And the one that we're part of gives probably the most money of any I've ever heard of people being part of. I mean, and so it's a major source of getting to do things. So the educational funds basically provide us freedom to pursue interests.
Exactly.
Whereas other charter schools, if I had joined that, it would have just paid for half a year of one kind of lesson.
Right.
And that's it.
Right. Or they provide for other things. So not every charter school gives educational funds. They might instead give you the curriculum. Whereas our educational funds, we don't get any curriculum unless we want it.
Yeah.
Educational funds, I think, are a big one. And I mean, at the end of the day, we pay our property taxes that go into the state, you know, and so it's nice to be a part of the public school system where my child does get that back.
Right.
You know, and so instead of it going to paying for the brick and mortar, you know, we get it for our curriculum the same way that the public school children get their curriculum covered. Yeah. So for me, I feel like that's a nice pro since I'm already paying into the system.
Well, yeah, and when you don't have 2 full-time parents in the home, that's a good way to supplement, like, if you were working, the things you could be doing.
Right. And I won't do this with every point, but I will say there's a lot of people who see that as a con by taking money from the government. They feel like they're, you know, making a deal with the devil, if you will. Yeah. No, they just say, you know what, you do you, but I don't want any part of the government being involved in my home. Yeah. And so I can see that too. And right now I don't feel like that's become a problem, but the more that they try to tell me what to do in my home, which we'll get to.
Well, and the funds there, for those who are like, what? They give you money? Well, for every charter school, there's a different way that they do it. Like for ours, we don't actually get money. No. We put in requests for activities and lessons and curriculum, and then they buy it. And
they approve it.
Yeah, they approve it. They review it, make sure it fits in all the parameters. And then they buy it for us, and then it gets delivered to us, or we can show up and get the gymnastics because our name is on a list.
Right, and nothing belongs to us. Any hard copies of anything belongs to the school. So when we leave the school, we are expected to return it. So it's not like we're getting a bunch of free things that we get to keep around forever.
Although I do wrap them up as presents because I figure in a few years they're not going to want them anyways. Those books aren't going to be exciting for them, and so when I go to return them, that's when we would have given them to a thrift store. They're just going back to the school instead. Yeah. And then other places, it's receipt based. So you show them the receipt and you're hoping they'll reimburse you. But
I'm guessing that's going to be going away in California. I don't think they're going to continue to authorize that type of situation just based on the information that we've seen and hear about. Okay, so another pro, and this isn't personal to me, it would be curriculum support. So I think that it's great for the people who are concerned about homeschooling. They're not sure what to do. And so you have curriculum support. You have the options available. You know, you have educators who are on staff to help you with these decisions. And so that can be a major pro for people.
Totes.
The next one is an assigned education specialist or a teacher. So every family enrolled in every charter school, independent study charter school that I know of, is assigned an educational specialist who you have to check in with and will help you. They're there to also provide you support and then make sure that you're adhering to whatever the charter school requires.
And they're part of a network. So if you have a question they can't answer, they can go to their network of teachers and also other homeschool parents they work with and recommend other curriculum, other lessons, other interventions, and things like that.
And then I know that we have a large number of teachers who have their Masters of Ed in our particular charter school. And so if that's something that's important to you, you know, those things exist. And it's nice to know that you have that level of support. But I was just thinking in a general sense, people who are nervous about homeschooling, this could be a major pro for you.
Okay.
But those are my big 3 that I highlighted.
Do you want me to do mine? Okay, so I kind of put in some as we went along, and mine are a little more separated out.
Right.
But it's also an opportunity where you can find wonderful homeschool friends to join a co-op community.
Sure.
Because I think of our own co-op, and because we are part of the charter,
right,
and we went to events and educational opportunities through this charter school, we made some of our best friends who make up like half of our co-op.
Right.
And so it's a great opportunity to find community if you're having a hard time doing that.
Right.
But you still have to put in the effort, because the school is not the community.
No.
If you can make
the peeps.
If you can connect with people and then bring them into your home and bring them into your life, now you have some homeschool community.
Totally.
And okay, another one I have, it relates to the experiences, because a lot of them do have science fairs and like we put on the dance.
Yeah.
Some even have sports.
Yeah.
And so these are all handled by others. And what's so nice is when you have some things that you can just attend without having to organize yourself or plan yourself or coordinate. And so that's something I think is a big benefit. If you can go to the end of the year party and there's bounce houses and it's like a fair, and that's what our school used to do.
Right.
And
of course we were the organizers of
it.
Yeah.
And we did face painting, and we had cotton candy, and then all of us moms are bonding because we're the ones getting cotton candy in our hair,
Yeah.
And so that was another one. Now, this is weird because this would normally be a con for me.
Right.
And it is a con for me, but state testing.
Right.
And the only reason I say it's a pro is because our kids do need to learn to test. And I think because even just applying for a receptionist job, you're going to be tested on.
Take a basic
typing
computer skills test. Yeah.
So to understand how to act under stress, under a time limit, something completely foreign to you is a good skill to have. And to build it in elementary school and junior high, that's a good safe time to do it when the scores don't matter.
Right. It doesn't matter.
And so it's a good time. So I love to sit down. Well, I don't love it, but I appreciate getting to sit down with them and do the pre-test and teach them the skills, because that's the only time I do that.
Sure.
I'm not teaching them test taking skills because
I
don't give them tests.
Yeah. We don't incorporate that into our actual home education. I don't give them grades.
Yeah. So this is that opportunity to do that. So that's why I try to see it as. But for others, well, it's a con. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then special education. So you'll see it listed as SPED services. And so if you have a special needs child, a charter school is a great way to get free special ed services. Some hybrids have brick and mortar electives and band, just like you said. And for me, it was foreign language, like things you cannot teach yourself, like not teach myself, but teach my kids myself. That was hard because I was like, I can't teach Spanish, but I really want them to learn Spanish. But I wanted them to learn it in kindergarten.
Right.
And the brick and mortar charter school hybrid did not offer it until 3rd grade. So I was like, well, they're not fulfilling my need anyways. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's always the opportunity for possible electives, and our school offers some online learning now too, which is kind of cool if that's what you're into. So they can offer and provide neat things outside of you being alone at your home all the time. And so it can be helpful for some people. So let's switch into cons. Again, some of these may be duplicative just because our lists will overlap a little bit. But my number one was committing to adhere to or follow or acknowledge the state standards.
Yeah, absolutely. 500%.
So that's on me for choosing to enroll in a homeschool charter that's a public school. So I think it's been a challenge for me because when we first enrolled, that wasn't the way the charter was set up. But it has now evolved into a very standard, focused, testing-focused charter school. So while for the most part, I can do what I want, we still have to check boxes. And the pressure to check those boxes has gotten greater over the years. And so that's a huge con for me. And that'll probably be the tipping point very soon for me to say, no, thank you. I don't need your funding anymore. It's not worth it for me to not have autonomy over what I teach and when I teach it and how I teach it. So that's a huge con. I'm sure that's a huge one for you too. Yeah. It's the primary con. I think for those of us who are confident homeschoolers and have a plan of education for our children. And while if you value the state standards and you want your child to follow them in the order that they go, then there's nothing wrong with that.
Totally.
But
and then they
for
can
me, it's
enter.
a huge con.
We don't plan to put our kids into traditional school. So if you want your kids to enter back into institutional school, then then thank goodness there's a list of
They'll
standards.
Matriculate much more seamlessly because they've stayed on the same schedule as the public schools. But if you're not planning to do that, then there's really not a lot of reason to stay on the state standards in our opinion. And we have other episodes that cover that more thoroughly. So I put this as a con, which was agreeing to the state testing. So in my context, I'm saying that by being a part of the charter school, I'm agreeing to take not even the state testing alone. But now I'm saying I'm also going to do your assessment testing 3 times a year.
Just the internal school assessment.
And then starting in 3rd grade, take the state testing at the end of every year. That's a lot of testing.
It is a lot.
I'm not even teaching to the standards.
Yeah. So what it happens is, which is why I have it as a con as well, it can get really frustrating for the students who aren't learning the things that are being tested on, and they could know Latin.
Yeah.
So it just didn't make sense. But
they test only one way, which is the whole, it's the whole, you have all these different animals standing in front of a tree, and they're all being measured on how well they climb a tree.
Oh, right.
A fish can't climb a tree.
Yeah.
So what does he get? A failing grade? He's a miserable animal.
And then there's tears, there's stress, there's pressure.
Right.
And you're missing out on, because we won't do other education,
it's
organized
a lot
education
for
on
them
that
to
day.
do it. We don't love it.
Yeah.
We just don't love being committed to it. It's one thing to go, oh, sure, you know what? Let's do it this year. But we're committing to it. Submitting work samples.
I have that too.
Yeah. So we, as elementary schoolers, our children, we only have to submit 1 work sample per learning period, which is
for 20 or 21 days. Yeah.
Right. So sometimes that's like 6 weeks
days,
because of holidays. And sometimes it's really short and it feels like it's 2 weeks long. And you're like, again?
Well, yeah, we just did it.
But it's literally 1 sample. And so if your kids do any kind of worksheet, that's considered a sample. Yeah. But it becomes this thing now where it has to have their name on it, and you have to do this, and you have to submit it by this date, and it has to, and then we're requested to turn in a certain type of sample so that throughout the year it's well-rounded. And that in and of itself isn't a big deal, because even if we privately homeschooled, we should be keeping our own records.
Yeah. So those are all things that kind of take away from the joy of homeschooling. So you have to decide, is the budget big enough that you're getting, and the support that you want, is what you want from the charter school going to outweigh the joy suckingness of it on the other side of things. And for me, I'm still in it. So I still super appreciate, I love the people I work with. I love the people I love the people I've met through it. And I do like that there are opportunities that I could tap into if I wanted to. Right. And everyone there, like the teachers and stuff, they're there because they do care about learning. They just all have different ideas. We were saying all these cons. We did say a lot of pros.
They needed the validating. Yeah. And that's perfect. That's fine. That's why it's so amazing to have school choice. If we come back to that. Totally. It's amazing to have school choice because we all have different needs.
Yeah.
So those are our pros and cons. Take from them what you will.
Yeah.
So let's transition into our
Coop Q A,
where we answer your questions. If you have a question, you can email us at mamahens@thecoomphomeschool.com.
Jessie, what's our question?
Our question today is, what do you use your charter school funds for? So I literally saw this one posted today, and I thought it was pertinent and relevant, and we didn't dive into it because that's not what this was totally about. So I broke it down into the categories. So again, some charter schools offer educational funds. How they deliver them or allow you to use them vary, but there's a few very standard things that people spend them on, and then there's some fun ideas. So the first one is curriculum. So if they don't provide you with curriculum but offer you funding for your own curriculum, that's what you're going to be using it on primarily, unless you're going a full faith-based curriculum, which you would have to pay for out of pocket.
I don't think I spent any money on curriculum
this
year. And then last year it was just their math books.
Right.
And then last year it was just their math books. Oh, this year I also spent but I spent it on
different things, not literal curriculum.
Because I don't buy a boxed curriculum. Like I don't buy the curriculum that covers all the subjects. So and I wanted to use most of my stuff on services, and then I love buying books with it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We bought the new math book. We bought the IEW.
Oh yeah,
writing.
You did. Yeah.
So I
buy writing and rhetoric and well-ordered language.
My social studies.
You're right. Yeah.
My California history.
My Latin.
Yeah.
So that's 4 things right there.
Yeah. But not exclusively.
And that's cheap though. Like our math books are like $40. My writing and rhetoric's like probably $20. So it doesn't add up to much because that's what we love about our school is we have a really nice budget.
Yeah.
And they try and give us as much money as they can, as the state will really allow.
If we were trying to mimic the public school, the public traditional school, and use the curriculum they're using, that would cost us $1,100 of our budget.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like the out of the box, everything designed for you to do at home. So that's the thing is curriculum can cost a lot. So it's nice that you have that available to you. But for us, we're just doing what we want to. We supplement it, and we're not breaking the bank on curriculum by any means. But it's nice to have that covered.
Yeah.
And so then there's a couple of categories that they break things into, which is consumables and the things that you use up during the year. So consumables, sticker activity books, especially for the younger kids, for alphabet, for coordination, for all the things. Puzzle books.
I got a Beatrix Potter puzzle.
Right, exactly. Workbooks. So for instance, my daughter this year is mastering her multiplication. And so I got some extra books, like a Harry Potter themed multiplication book to help.
Yeah, we had that.
The Usborne times table book to just, focus on that kind of thing. So that's really nice. You don't have to spend.
Books.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just going to throw them away. The school doesn't expect those back because they presume that you consume them throughout the year. And then art supplies are one of our favorite consumables because you should be doing that. You should have them available at all times for the kids. Get that set of watercolors, get your crayons, get your colored pencils, get a nice set of gel pens, get all of that kind of stuff because they're really awesome to have on hand. And those do add up.
And and it's good to get the quality stuff, and then you can get the canvases too. Like we got stretched canvases, little ones, big ones.
Right. And
printer paper.
Yep, I was just going to add that in here. I forgot that one. But printing supplies. So not even just the printer paper, but they will often approve even your ink. So anything
and a printer. They'll buy printers.
Yeah. So, but that's not a consumable. Yeah. So they'll provide technology. And so, anything that you use to enhance your homeschool that you might use up during the year is a consumable and a great way to spend those funds.
It is, yeah.
It's very valuable. And so then now you have the non-consumables. So technology. You can get a new laptop. You can get a printer. You have strict rules for doing that. And a laptop will cost you a pretty penny of your funds.
And they want to outfit you with technology so our kids can
to support the learning.
Savvy, just like everybody else.
Yeah. And books. So reference books are fantastic. I highly recommend spending your own money on books that you want to keep around forever.
Yeah.
But if there's, a book series that you can't find at the library, you don't want to buy because you don't know if your kid's going to like it, it's a great opportunity to test something out. And it is educational. And so it's not really a wasted amount of money through your funds.
And usually your kids only want things for a certain amount of time anyways. And so as long as you don't exit the school that year, because when you exit the school, you have to give everything back.
Yeah.
And some schools require you give it back at the end of the year.
Right.
But our school lets us hold on to it as long as we need it, which is such a better use of money.
Right, because
you don't have to rebuy it every
year.
Yeah, it's the reference books last forever. And then I have other kids, so now I don't have to buy the teacher manual for the other 2 kids. I can just buy the student workbook, which frees up more money to spend on other things. It's just more efficient. So the whole turning in at the end of the year is absurd to me.
It is. But each school has to manage it the way they need to. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then there's tools. So you can get microscopes, you can get binoculars. I
just got some slides for them to look at. So I was going to wait to do it when we do like diseases.
Right. We got the pocket microscope. So that we can take it with us on our vacations and stuff. And so there's no slides, I don't think. It's just one little unit, and it's got like this LED light. So I haven't tested it out yet, but
how fun.
Jake had seen it and told me about it, and I was like, ooh, we'll let the school buy it.
So what you can do is you go on Amazon and you find things you want, and then the ordering system for at least our school, you can literally just add them to the cart.
Right.
And then they look at them, approve them, make sure they're educationally enriching for your child.
Right.
And then they get them for you. So it's not hard to get these things.
No. And then maps, globes. Think about the things that you might put up around your house, you know. So
educational posters.
Exactly. So if you're doing human body and you want that skeleton on the wall, you know.
Yeah.
Now
or the squishy body. Or I got an apron with all the. I was going to pin the tail on the donkey, but it's an apron with all the organs. Yeah, that'll throw on. Cool.
Yeah, so all of that kind of stuff is really awesome. And every charter school will have different rules about what they'll approve. And as we get into this last category, services and vendors, sometimes the schools now have to have a ratio. They can only approve a certain percentage of your funds going to services versus curriculum. So they do want to make sure that a good chunk of your money is truly being used for what they consider curriculum educational stuff. So your services could include PE. You know, you can go to that Taekwondo dojo or whatever it is. And, you know, there's some amazing programs out there that offer the ability to try out different sports and rotate throughout the year. If you're doing volleyball and trying that out, you know, so you get this great opportunity to find outlets for your kids and consider it PE, and it's covered by the
and
school.
Swim lessons, so that would be considered. So, but the vendor has to sign up with the school. They need to be fingerprinted. They have to abide by accounting principles that the government approves of.
Right.
So they have certain parameters. So not every vendor will get approved.
No, and they have to be fingerprinted and live scanned. So if they're going to work with your kids, that's a requirement as well.
Yeah, and not every vendor wants to pay for that.
Nope. So yeah, they will only pay for certain, well, that's not true. Classical, for instance, will reimburse you for any place you go. They don't have to be approved vendors. Different charter schools have different rules, but ours are required to have them be vetted vendors. First. They have to apply and be approved. And then they pay for services that are online. OutSchool, for instance, so you can sign up for courses online and take that as electives.
They even have like our school provides computer offerings in that what am I trying to say? Subscriptions. So ABC Mouse, they'll pay for a year of ABC Mouse for your kindergartner and TK kindergarten first grader, you know, and my kids had a typing assistant subscription. So they had that for 9 months. And,
that's fun.
And so they paid for all that. That was free at that time. Now I think it's not part of the offering, but
yeah, now they have only a selected amount. And then if you don't want to use those ones, too bad. Then you can go and request these other ones. But that was also really fun. We liked education.com. They had a few online typing things that Sophia could do, and then at the time that was helpful for my work samples when she was in first, second grade when I wasn't really doing any workbook style stuff. So it would help us find our free worksheet, and, you know, because we were members and stuff. And then there's clubs and classes. So outside of the PE and stuff, you could take you could be a part of a chess club, or you could take art lessons. And so there's different kinds of electives and
and ours did like a homeschool art. So it was performing arts, visual art, and movement. Right.
So again, our particular charter school will pay for anything, anybody who's approved.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool, the things I often have fun just going and saying this area, like North County or whatever, and then I scroll through the vendors, just to see what all my options are, or horseback riding.
Yeah, I did the same thing. Yeah, to see, because I was looking more for horsemanship, I think, at the end of the day, than horseback riding and training. So I did a new search for that, and so I have a few places I'm going to call and check out.
Yeah, awesome.
So that's how we'd use our charter school funds.
Yeah.
thanks for listening. We love your support. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast, leave a rating and review to let us know how we're doing, and share our podcast with your friends who need a little community, humility, and joyful fun in homeschooling.